It's going to be like this. I'm going to double check it on my own.
Okay. Hey, Will, you're live now.
Hang on, I need to just. Where's the link?
So,
Everyone's probably watching. Oh, there's 2 people watching.
they're not ready.
Oh, brilliant! Excellent.
Where's the link?
Sorry, I'll never hear the end of it.
So I guess you will have to turn from time to time.
Have to what, sorry?
Turn.
Yeah, of course, yeah, no problem.
Just watch the cable of the microphone. Okay. But let's give 5 minutes. Tomorrow, when are you coming tomorrow? Because you are meeting.
These guys are probably hearing all about our plans.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. Let's get started. Invite everyone. Please grab your seats, something to drink. So, well, thank you everyone for coming. And before I introduce Will, I want to make a few announcements. One of them being that the NSERC Create Forum will be hosted on November the 8th and November the 9th. We will have a workshop, and Lori will be sending a follow-up email with more information about our activities this fall. And this lecture by Will be partially sponsored by the NSERC Create program, and we're very happy to do that. Also, I wanted to, so I'm actually very glad that Will accepted our invitation to give a lecture. And actually, this came all from a talk we had, I think, last summer, when Will came to visit his in-laws in Canada, and he drove to Carleton, and we started, to exchange some ideas. And then Will said that there was an opportunity to apply for some funding to have him come into Carleton and stay with us for a little while and do some research. So I'm glad that everything happened so smoothly. And Will is also a member of ICOMOS, as I am a member of ICOMOS, a very active. Will is a member of ICOMOS Ireland, but also he's an expert member of the Archaeology and Management, that's ICAM, Scientific Committee. And he's been also working in an important initiative of ICOMOS, which has to do with climate change. And we have a partnership with Google Arts and Culture and SciArc, and we are making, and he will be talking about this during his lecture, we are making case studies to illustrate the importance of climate change in the global agenda. I mean, for all of us, climate change is something important, but the aspects of heritage hasn't been really dealt at the highest levels of the United Nations. And Will is part of that team of ICOMOS that has been very influential in making that point very important, also to deal with cultural heritage. So Will Megarry is a landscape archaeologist and a lecturer in geographic information science at the School of Natural and Built Environment in Queen's University in Belfast. He's originally from Dublin, Ireland, and he has been working in projects around the world. And I'm not going to spoil the fun because I saw some of the slides that Will is presenting, and it will be really interesting. But also Will has this connection with Canada, so his wife is Canadian, and he has children, and he comes every summer, so I'm hoping to host him every summer at Carleton. All the talks that we have been very useful. And also he will be talking about an MOU that Queen's University has signed with Carleton University. So there will be opportunities to also have student exchanges and faculty exchanges with Queen's University. So Will,
Thank you very much. I'll start this. Try to take time.
And just remember to talk to the microphone.
I will. Can people hear me out there? Yeah, everyone in the back can hear me. Great. Yeah, thank you for that lovely introduction. As you said, I'm one part of a Hiberno-Canadian family. Actually, I'm a small part now because I have 2 kids, and so there's 3 of them against me, and they're all here in Canada with me at the moment. I'm from the other Queen's University, the one in Belfast, and I am repeatedly reminded by Queen's Kingston people that their university is in fact 4 years older than my university. So I am aware of this, but I'll touch at the end. That's what Mario was saying about a new MOU we have between our universities, which I'm very keen to build upon for both staff and students. So, as Mario said, I'm a landscape archaeologist, and I'm also a geospatial person. I worked many years commercially for Esri before coming back into the academy, into university. And what I'm going to talk about today is how we can use geospatial technologies to manage and to promote World Heritage. So what I'm going to be doing is presenting just on a range of different projects from all around the world. And what really links these is that they are all the solutions to the particular issues raised are based around geospatial solutions, geospatial technologies. And really one of the key things in this talk is the idea that we need to move away from thinking about geospatial technology as an added extra in this World Heritage process, and really start thinking about it as a key part in every step of World Heritage. So in saying that, I think it's useful to probably just start with this question of thinking about what is World Heritage, because depending on what our backgrounds are, you've probably got a slightly different opinion as to what World Heritage is. If you're an archaeologist like me, you probably think of the Yahoo or Rapa Nui and large extant archaeological features. But architects or town planners might think of urban sites like Lunenburg, or people interested in cultural landscapes might think about things like the Champigny hillsides in France, which is also a World Heritage site. And then even for anthropologists, we have sites, cultural heritage sites, which are World Heritage sites because they are culturally extant expressions of cultural heritage in them. Something like Louvre, which is a very important natural site that becomes cultural because of its significance. Sorry, this is a bit wordy, but one of the things I want to do today is not just show you a lot of pretty pictures about geospatial things in World Heritage sites, although hopefully I'll do that as well. But to really try to fit that within the framework of the policy of the World Heritage Convention and the policies of the advisory committees. So all these things make up this larger body of World Heritage sites. So for something to become a World Heritage site, it must have something called outstanding universal value. And this, quite simply, just means that these places transcend traditional local or national importance and actually have importance globally, that they become part of a kind of global heritage, something which we can all appreciate. They also must be deemed to have a certain level of authenticity, so to be authentic to what they originally were, and also to have a level of integrity, which is a measure of wholeness or intactness, and often comes up when we think about reconstructions of archaeological sites and of ancient sites, when we think about the integrity of that site. How true are they to their original and authentic representations? The World Heritage process, this is quite a simplified example of it, but what I want to do is map some of the examples I'm going to give onto this process. Every country has a national tentative list of World Heritage sites. Countries can then select to go forward with the nomination of a property, a dossier to put forward, which is then assessed by expert committees. Cultural sites are assessed by ICOMOS, and natural sites are assessed by IUCN. A decision is then made at the World Heritage Committee meeting every year, and this has been in the news quite a lot recently, and because we've seen the inscription of some new sites, including some Canadian sites, and of significance to the work which Megarry did here, also of Ghana and Myanmar. And that is not where the process stops, and this is really a crucial part of what I want to talk about today. Some people think that once a World Heritage Site is inscribed on the list, that is where it stops. But actually it really only starts there, because from that point onward there is a ongoing monitoring of that site by state parties and sometimes also by external organisations to ensure that those original outstanding universal value and integrity and authenticity are retained. So they must stay authentic, that integrity must actually remain. And in some rare conditions where they feel like those are under threat, sites can be taken and they can be put on the World Heritage List in danger. And so some examples which we see in the media at the moment would be places like Timbuktu, and the area which went on the World Heritage Site in danger. This freed up an awful lot of finance to help deal with some of these issues, and it was taken off that list. And so this is usually only a temporary measure. And if we just think about two areas where I want to talk about today, what I first want to talk about is the idea of identification, inventory, boundary demarcation. Okay? And this happens around the point of nomination. So when a property is nominated, it must set up its boundaries. Okay? And this is based on the World Heritage Operational Guidelines, which says the boundaries should be drawn to incorporate all the attributes that convey the outstanding universal value and to ensure the integrity and or authenticity of the property. So we see those key terms again. And also, boundaries should be drawn to include all those various attributes which are a direct tangible expression of the outstanding universal value of the property. So the idea is that during the nomination process, you need to define the extent of the site and what makes that site significant. This is actually much easier than others. So if you think about kind of very enclosed sites, so this being the Great Cay in Lascaux in Dordogne in southern France, and you have an enclosed site. It's quite easy to define the boundaries of a site like that. Okay, it also makes it much easier to manage. Lascaux is a good example of a World Heritage Site where actually they stopped all entry and they created a replica. People can now actually only visit the replica. I feel like my Sims water bottle. I'm doing some advertising here. There are other places that are more tricky. So especially when thinking about island locations, so this again in Rapa Nui, the rock or the forest of Rapa Nui, or in fact places like the heart of the island of Orkney, it's quite tricky to actually demark the extent of that landscape, of that site. Because the worry of putting a line on a map is that you're actually making a decision which has tangible impacts. So on one part of the line, you can do one thing, another part of the line you can't. Okay? And that means that it can be quite tricky to actually get this right. Landscapes are not black and white binary things where one place is part and one place is not. They're far more complicated than that. And just coming back to one of our charters, this is actually the ICOMOS Charter for Protection and Management of Archaeological Heritage. So these charters are used by state bodies of UNESCO to help manage their cultural resources. And this is again just stressing the idea that archaeological heritage must be based on the fullest possible knowledge of its extent and nature. The importance of inventory, the importance of understanding the extent of the cultural asset. And this is where I'm going to say where remote sensing comes in, where geospatial techniques come in. So when I'm talking about geospatial techniques, I'm talking about the range of computer programs and techniques of software which allow us to manage and look at spatial data. And that economics charter also says that it should be the overriding principle that the gathering of information about the archaeological heritage should not destroy any of the archaeological evidence that is necessary, and that non-destructive techniques, aerial and ground survey, and sampling therefore be encouraged wherever possible in preference to total excavation. So this is our core as remote sensing people. And this is the basis upon which we kind of play our craft, if you want. And because it's stressing the importance of utilizing everything that is available to us. It could be terrestrial LiDAR, but all these non-destructive ways of doing this. And what I want to talk about first is the value of laser scanning, so LiDAR. And since you're doing an awful lot of terrestrial laser scanning, I'm going to be talking about some of that later, but primarily here I'm first going to be talking about airborne laser scanning because it's been an especially powerful tool where I'm from. This is the mounting of a LiDAR system on an aircraft, so usually an airplane or a helicopter, and the capturing of highly detailed topographical information about the landscape. So in a sense, it's picking up the bumps and scrapes and marks which have survived within that landscape. And those things can correspond to cultural activities in the past. And it's often compared to oblique aerial photography. So this is a site called Borneo, where I come from in Ireland. And you can see on the left an oblique, so a side-on aerial picture taken in the 1920s. And then this is a LiDAR image of the same area. The benefit of the LiDAR images, you can move it around and manipulate and change that focal point, which allows you to see the landscape quite clearly. And the news is always full of aerial LiDAR stories. And every day you turn on your computer and there's another temple discovered in the forest, or canal systems picked up somewhere, or pyramids in the desert. And it has completely revolutionized the way we as archaeologists apply trade and what we do. And because it's allowed us to see the landscape in a totally different way. And survey, which previously would have been so time-consuming to pretty much be redundant, we're now able to do very quickly and very rapidly using LiDAR. Not to say it doesn't have its issues, it doesn't pick up everything, it can only pick up things that actually leave a tangible mark on the landscape. So in cultural heritage landscapes or cultural landscapes where there aren't extant features, it's not much use at all. So the first example I want to talk about is a site I worked on when I worked for CSRM in Baltimore. This was working with a colleague of ours from Moscow, Homer. And it's an inscription or a nomination of a site called Orkholeshny, Moldova. It's been submitted in 2017. And it's nominated under a number of criteria which are meant to kind of exemplify its outstanding universal value. And so in this case, it is an outstanding example of traditional human settlement land use procedures, and these are based on World Heritage Convention. And we were brought in basically to look at a LiDAR data set from this landscape to try and actually help them define those cultural boundaries, to try and work out whereabouts they wanted to draw those lines, which are central to that nomination process. Anyone familiar with aerial LiDAR will be kind of quite familiar with these kind of images. These are different types of surfaces. So what we get from aerial LiDAR is a very, very high resolution digital elevation model. We can use this to look at different kinds of hill shades, so light shining from here or here or here, or in fact all places at the same time. And we can use it to do something called a sky view factor, which detects the amount of sky, a single cell within the area. You can see. Anyway, we can do all sorts of things with this, but the benefit is that it allowed us to identify a large number of sites within the area of the proposed nomination which had never been identified. So things like, here, you can see this one enclosure here, we have 2 ditches. This is actually under some light canopy, and you can also see these kind of features here. It's moated site going around the traditional town. And perhaps most spectacularly in this example was this a tri-belt promontory fort up against the edge of the cliff. Now, one of the things that myself and others who get really fed up with is archaeologists using aerial LiDAR and saying, here's another site, here's another site, here's another site. And that's not what I want to do here. But what I do want to say is that this is a really, really useful tool if actually you're trying to think about what is the optimal way to incorporate the greatest representation of the heritage of the landscape in a kind of management framework. And that's what we were able to do in this situation. We were able to say, here are 3 options. They both have their pluses and their minuses, but they're based on what we were able to get from this data set. A second example I want to look at just for aerial LiDAR is a Neolithic landscape, and we did a survey in 2012 using the LiDAR dataset to really see what LiDAR could bring to one of the most intensely studied, which I've been studying over and over and over again, and for over a century. So this is a picture of the LiDAR. This is a very passage to Megarry in the middle. You can see things like these cursus monuments here, and all these other kind of small burial mounds around the place. And one of the great things about this, and this has come up again and again and again, so this is just a little animation showing a new slide that we found here, which kind of jumps out as we can move the light around the landscape. But one of the great things the study showed us was that inventory and boundary demarcation is a continual process as well. That we can take these new techniques and apply them to intensely study landscapes, and we can still find significant new sites which help us understand that landscape better. So in this case, we found over 100 new sites within the core and buffer zone of one of the most studied World Heritage sites in the world. And this is just a quick example of to show, now this is not something which we actually did, but some people might have seen this in the news last year, which is that we had an unprecedented drought in Ireland last year, and this drone photography, a colleague of mine called Ken Williams, flew a drone over this area and found this incredible henge monument right in the heart of the World Heritage Site, which had never ever been identified before. So this isn't something we need to do once, this is something that we want to do over and over and over again, and we can get more and more information from these really precious landscapes. The second thing I want to look at is how we can use geospatial technologies to react and adapt, and then finally finish by thinking about climate change. So a lot of text here, and basically what I want to highlight here, this is from the World Heritage Convention, don't bother reading it all, but what it basically says is that the member states have an obligation to react and adapt to risks. And in this case, it does identify things, for example, like tourist development projects, but it also talks about calamities, cataclysms, serious fires, landslides, changes in water level. It doesn't talk about climate change specifically, but it does talk about the various impacts we are now facing and being something that we need to be able to adapt to in these sites. And over-tourism really is a crucial one here. It's sometimes very, very difficult to actually predict when it's going to happen. So we have some very good examples. So this is, for example, China. This is the city gate in Dubrovnik. I'm from Northern Ireland, right? And we have some tourists come. And all our predictions were this nice, gentle graph of people going up. And then HBO came and did Game of Thrones. And we literally saw the number of tourists go up fourfold in the space of a couple of years, right? And so we're suddenly dealing with incredible numbers of people. And that, of course, is affecting both the archaeological sites and the heritage, but also people's enjoyment of those locations. And another example being here, this is the island World Heritage Site of Skellig Michael. It's an early Christian monastic island off the southwest coast of Ireland. And it's also the final resting place of the Last Jedi, which again means that we're fortunate in that you can only really get out to the island about 30 or 40 days a year because it's so difficult to get to. But all those ship places are now taken up by people dressed like this, going out to get those pictures, right? So the thing is that, you know, we often talk about over-tourism, but sometimes we can have under-tourism just until the point whereby something becomes huge, right? And suddenly all the kind of planning which you want to do, or which you had done over the last one, can't really help you because you're just talking about such an enormous influx of people, and that's quite tricky. And this is a problem that's only getting bigger. You know, we're seeing more and more people, and actually I don't call it a problem, right? Because I mean, tourism is people having the opportunity to visit these great places. As World Heritage people, we are interested in part of this dynamic. You know, we promote these places as special places worth visiting. We want people to visit them. We say they are global heritage, outstanding universal value. We want people to visit these places. We just perhaps didn't really think about quite how many we're going to end up visiting. So if you look at this map from the World Tourism Organization, we can see how just the number of international tourists is growing steadily, and Europe still remains one of the major groups of people traveling. Pacific traveling as well. So the numbers are going up. And this leads us to this question of how can we actually manage these large numbers of people? And one of the models that people have often used is this idea of the carrying capacity. So the carrying capacity would be how many people can visit the destination at the same time. And so perhaps a handy way to think about this would be to think about the fact that some sites have a carrying capacity of 0. An example would be the cave sites we talked about earlier. People cannot enter because any kind of interruption in that environment is going to damage the site. So you have to stop entry altogether. Then you have some other sites, so this is Newgrange again in the Boyne in Ireland, or whatever name or heritage sites, and that has a carrying capacity of 130,000, because that is the number of people who can go in and out of this tumulus every year without causing damage to the rocks on the other side of it. And then you have large urban sites, places like Angkor or Petra, which have much, much larger carrying capacity. But central to this idea is that carrying capacity is not a static number. Managers and site managers love the idea of being given a number to deal with. But of course it depends on a wide range of factors. It depends on how long people stay, right? It depends on if it's raining or not. It depends on how much of the site those people want to see. So it's actually a malleable figure that is liable and subject to change and can be changed based on different management practices. So what I want to put now is the site of Machu Picchu, an absolutely incredible site, and we had the great privilege of working there again when I was working with Doug Comer in Baltimore. It's actually a cultural and natural inscription. That means that it is a site that was inscribed based on its cultural value and its natural value, although people tend to think of it only as a cultural World Heritage Site. And we were invited to do this study because the site was seeing an ever-increasing number of visitors. So in 1980, they had 180,000 visitors, and in 2013, they had 1.3 million. And one of the things that was happening was, while Machu Picchu was in fact an incredibly forgiving site, and is a very forgiving site, everybody I know who's been, has anyone been here in the room to Machu Picchu? Right? Great. Was it amazing? Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I've never met a single person who said to me it was not amazing, right? Even when they were queuing up to get in places, it was still amazing. But one of the things we did during the project was actually to ask people whether or not they would consider revisiting, or whether or not they would consider recommending to family and friends. And we correlated that with the number of people entering in the site. And we did find that the overcrowding was affecting people's experience of the site, both how much they enjoyed it and whether or not they wanted to actually recommend it to friends or not. And a big part of this problem, if we think back to that idea of carrying capacity as a malleable figure, which we can actually influence, right, and change, was about managing visitor flow around the site. Because when you looked at the number of people coming to the site, the distribution looked like this. So this is your time in the morning. Everybody arrived at 6 o'clock in the morning because they wanted to see the sunset. People who were at Machu Picchu, did you go to watch the sunset? Okay, good. A lot of people do. So almost, okay, it's too early, exactly. That's the real kind of you know, well over a quarter of the people were actually there at 6 o'clock to get in. And that causes huge congestion issues, okay? Whereas people arriving after 12 pretty much had the site to themselves. People thought they were going to come and stay all day. Most people actually didn't stay that long.
Toilet.
And part of the reason, toilet. Site management is always about toilets. First thing I learned when I started working, it's usually about where the bathroom is. Part of the reason is expectations, right? Because everybody thought they wanted to get there early so that they could watch this. But in fact, what most people were seeing is this. Okay? Yeah, exactly. See? So everybody, and actually, this is what it's generally like in the morning, and it often clears up throughout the day. So arriving at 6 a.m. if you want a site like this is actually pretty poor. Another reason is that everyone thinks they're going to have a moment like this, right? And isn't that, I mean, beautiful? I look at me, that's me, I'm taking it in, and I'm having a moment, right? That's what was going on behind me. Okay, here I am. Literally, I'm sitting at that spot, and these people were queuing up behind me to have that same experience. Okay? So a huge amount of it is about that expectation of everybody arriving early to have this experience, when actually delivering that experience is about changing those visitation patterns. And so the first thing we wanted to understand was we wanted to understand how people were currently visiting the site. Okay? Because we talked to guides, and the guides said, oh, people always come in and they go clockwise around the site. So we put in some of these lightweight infrared counters, and we were then able to map the flow of people. And basically what you're seeing here is each of these is a different time. You can see at the entrance point, it's very much shaped like this. when you get around to this final section, people are visiting here later. So first thing in the morning, there's a whole side of Machu Picchu where nobody visits. Okay, where nobody visits, right? Now, there's nothing stopping you doing it, right? There's nobody saying you have to get this time. There's nobody saying you have to go in this direction. But in fact, everybody followed the same route around the place. Except for one group of people, and I always tell the story because I think it's really interesting from a tourism management perspective. There was one group of people who had worked this out, and they put it on their blogs, and they all went here first, and they were yogis. Okay? People who wanted to go there and do yoga. And they'd worked out that if they wanted to do yoga in peace, they would go, there was certain places over here where they could go and do that before everybody else arrived. Okay? Knowing your demographic is very important when trying to manage archaeological sites. And because it's great, there's nothing wrong with that. Perfect, exactly what we want to do. We can move people around the site slightly. So this is just some of those stats in a bit more detail. The 1, 2, 3, 4 is traditionally the way in which we do that, and you can see that 1 being incredibly busy first in the morning, whereas 4 doesn't really get busy until about 11, 12 o'clock, right? Which is the last kind of main place in Machu Picchu. Is this sounding familiar to people who visited? Yeah, it always does. Yeah. So one of the things was also we were interested in was, you know, people who arrived at different times, how did they move around the site? Okay, so we knew the raw numbers of people, but of course, as people arrive in, people continue to arrive in, and they continue to arrive in. So it's cumulative effect. So what we did was we hummed and hawed with all sorts of complicated geospatial patterns and using mobile phone data or whatever, and we couldn't get any of it to work, so we just gave people these stickers, right? And then we counted them as they walked around the site. So the people who came in between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. got a green sticker, people who came in between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. got a red sticker. And actually, this is funny, I was in Paris a few months ago, and I saw somebody on the metro there who had one of these stickers on the outside of their journal. And they'd obviously been there for the 2 weeks we were doing this project. Anyway, and what we then did was we set up people counting, right? They just had counters, and as you were going through, they were seeing. And what this allowed us to do was to see, so these are the people who came in between 6 and 8. We can see that between 6 and 7 in the morning, they're very busy in this area down here, which is the Temple of the Sun. And as by the next hour, they've all moved up to the top of the site, okay? Then next hour, they're coming around that other side. This is that part of the site which is traditionally not visited until later on. Then you had a certain amount of people who had already left the site, but people are revisiting places. Usually because, first of all, they were so busy, so they've gone back. But of course, they're also coming into contact with people who are still coming in, right? And we were able this way to trace people as they moved around the site, okay? We're all the way up to 3, 4 o'clock. At this point, 90% of people who entered between 6 and 8 are left. Okay, so this is a much smaller sample of people, but it's still interesting to see where they end up. Because what we can then do is to compare, the total number of visitors between 10 and 11. And this is, very, very busy around here. And by that time, the people who came earlier are almost all further over on the other end of the site. Right? So thinking about visitors, almost like we think about water. How do these people flow around the site? How can we change and work on that flow? And a crucial part of this is how long people stay, and this actually changed depending on what day you were in. So the green people actually stayed quite long, and when we look at the demographics of these, most of the people who were there this is the practical action, most of the people who were there at 6 a.m. to get in and who stayed longer than everybody else came from countries which had good public holidays, right? Or people had good holidays. So they were backpacking. They were able to spend longer in places as opposed to people came as part of package tours and they only had a short amount of time on the site. But understanding how long people stayed based on when they came in was really, really important, because these green people who came in first, right, they came in at 6 o'clock thinking, I'm going to spend the whole day there. They did spend longer than everybody else, but the average duration still had most of them leaving for lunchtime. Okay, they got hungry, there's no food on site, they need to use the bathroom, so they leave. And basically, people arrive later, stay shorter and shorter amounts of time, and this had something also to do with what time trains came in. And revisits were a central part of this as well. And if you're wondering where all this data is going to go, I'm going to come back to that in just a minute, right? So people, in this case, the blue is people they visited the place once, red is they visited the place twice, and grey is they visited the place 3 or more times. These are key locations within the actual sanctuary, the Yakarika itself. And And we can see some fairly high levels of visitation, right? Especially at some of the more crowded places, and people are coming back more than once usually to actually try and have a bit of experience there by themselves. This was one of the most interesting statistics that we came across. Because we asked people what the most important part of the site was, right? And it was not the temples, right? And it was not the kind of sacred rock or the guardhouse. For people, the most important place on the site to visit was the place where they got the photo. Okay, they got the Machu Picchu photo, right? And I always joke about this because I always tell this story. And a friend of mine that is part of this project, who shall remain nameless, was looking for love at the time on Match.com, and he had worked out that if you put in a particular combination of things, so I like travel, I like culture, I like this, that, or the other, a huge number of the profile pictures were people at Machu Picchu. Okay, so it's often about the image that we want to promote, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not being critical of it. You know, going to amazing places is often about being able to say we've been to amazing places. But this is useful to know if you're trying to manage the flow of people around the site, because as an archaeologist, I'm thinking everybody wants to go to the temple, right? But actually, they don't. Where people really want to go is to get that amazing shot, because it is just so spectacular. And it is also an archaeological experience, right? That view. It's not. I'm not saying it's better or worse than any of the others. So part of this is then also understanding the age distribution. So we can see here that the younger people tended to come in earlier. When you get up to the kind of people coming in later in the day, around lunchtime, you have kind of differences between, you know, kind of. You have to be careful now, some rapidly approaching these ages. You know, 40 to 60, and some of that is because they're coming on package tours. And the reason this is important is because the different experiences and the different ways in which you might manage this flow can depend quite a lot on where people are from and what age they are. Okay? So questions about where people come from can actually affect and can actually become part of the solution. Another thing we did, we were talking about this yesterday, was thinking about trying to involve people in the solution of a site like this. So for example, nobody wants to visit a site and feel like they're crowded, okay? Everybody wants to be able to go somewhere and feel like they're having a good time by themselves or with a small group of people. So one of the things we proposed, and it wasn't implemented, but just to show the kind of geospatial potential here, and was the use of geospatial apps on phones, and guards could actually put in what part of the sites were busiest at any one time. Okay? And it was a very qualitative observation. It wasn't like there are 100 people here. It was just, it's crowded, it's moderately crowded, it's not crowded at all. And that then would feed back to a web map, and the idea was that web map could be placed at all sorts of different locations, and people could actually look at it and make a decision themselves as to whether or not it was the right time to go, or where they were going to go first. Right? So this is more of a kind of proof of concept of what you can use. It wasn't a brilliant solution here, but actually that kind of mobile GIS, which allows for instant transmission of data. So what do we do with all this data? Well, a crucial part of managing visitor flow is to not actually minimize the experience or lessen the experience of people at these places. It's to give them a better experience, right? And a big part of, did anyone walk the Inca Trail? Did you walk the Inca Trail? Who was there? Yeah, okay, so people have walked the Inca Trail, right? The numbers of people on the Inca Trail, it's a 4-day trail, have been capped for quite a while, it's 500 people per day. But there are actually lots of different Inca Trails, okay? And one of the things we suggested was opening these up to other people. So there's some Inca Trails which are harder, there's some Inca Trails which are a lot easier, there's some Inca Trails that last 5 days, there's some Inca Trails that last 5 hours. So if you are trying to stagger the arrival of people at a site, start somebody on a 4-hour walk at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to arrive on the site at, you know, at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? When the main crowds have started to actually dissipate. And so part of the solution here was suggesting opening up of all these other Inca Trails, because not only are you reducing congestion, but you're giving people a better experience, right? That to have this experience. Maybe they weren't able to go on the traditional Inca Trail, but they were able to go on this. Another key part is we took all that data about congestion and we put it into a geometric network, okay, in GIS. And this allowed us to actually model the optimal routes around the place depending on the time of the day, where you could have multiple routes running at different times. It also allowed us to model what it would be like to close off certain parts of the site at certain times. And how would that actually expedite people's experience around the site? And it might be the first thing in the morning, some of the most congested areas are closed, and then they're opened later on, which means that if people stay longer, they can go back and look at them again. This is just looking at some of those routes we talked about. But the other thing about this is thinking about this as a regional issue, okay? Because overcrowding and managing overcrowding is never just about things you can do at one particular site. One of the amazing things about this part of Peru, and in fact most parts of the world with amazing World Heritage sites, is this honeypot phenomenon where everybody wants to go to the incredible place. But of course, actually, if you were to take Machu Picchu out of this equation, if it wasn't there are 20 other sites in the Sacred Valley which are absolutely amazing. So you could actually make the argument that Machu Picchu tourism here, okay? That everybody wants to go there, they don't want to go to other places. But what if you can take somebody and say, okay, well, we're going to start at 6 o'clock in the morning, we're going to go to a craft market, then we're going to go to a restaurant and have amazing food. Food is always the second most important thing for everybody, right? People go to look at birds and then they like food, or they go to look at archaeology and then they want food, right? So, you're alternating this experience, and in doing that, you're able to again control when people arrive at a site, okay? So again, you're improving the experience by taking a regional approach. This was a study we did for the Peruvian Ministry of Culture, and they have actually adopted pretty much all of the recommendations we have here. It's funny, one of the things we were a little less keen on was this idea of time tickets, and they're pretty blunt instruments, although they are effective, but they do affect people's enjoyment of it. They have actually adopted these, so anybody who's tried to be in the last year will know now that they need to have time tickets, and I think it's probably a good idea, that, when used alongside. Okay, great. So, I've censored this slide, right? But a lot of the work I've been doing recently has been exploring this intersection between climate change and cultural heritage. Generally because I think it's really one of the only shows in town when we're thinking about risks to heritage, right? It's a huge thing at the moment. And cultural heritage is in a kind of unique position, especially World Heritage, because it's so iconic, right? It allows us to tell a story, to tell a message about things. Because anything which we do from an adaptive capacity is always going to be playing second fiddle to the primary thing, which is going to be carbon emissions reduction. Right? And there's been a lot of academic and media coverage. So this was a really impressive study which looked at the impact of World Heritage sites within the Mediterranean. It was published, it was just published last year. Showing a huge number of World Heritage sites within the next 100 years, already led to 100 flood, are going to be very negatively affected. We saw something similar published last year as well, saying there was 200,000 sites in the Arctic, right? Many of which are under imminent threat from climate change, so the melting of sea ice and permafrost, leading to often the exposure of organic materials, right? So this is a huge issue. This is a site called Doonbeg in the south of Ireland. It's a nice little castle, so in Portugal it's Iron Age, and then you've got this wall here, and last year this entire part of the water just fell into the ocean, right? And the reason I put this up as an example is because literally overnight the message boards online and the radio calling shows were full of people saying we need to do something about climate change, okay? Because this is an iconic part of our heritage in Ireland which is being lost. And this is Starbray in Orkney, heart of Neolithic Orkney, one of the best examples of Western European Neolithic domestic architecture. And this is this wonderful house which is hidden in the sand for so long. This is the retaining wall in Orkney is, and no matter what they do here, they're going to lose. And this is actually made in media as well. The New York Times has been doing a really, really interesting series on how climate change is impacting iconic World Heritage. So they did the Cedars of Lebanon, they did the Lake of Potosi in Bolivia, and they had this great one at Rapa Nui on Easter Island, looking at how the Ahu, our actual city's iconic statue, are actually falling into the sea. And these things get a huge amount of public interest, right? Because they're so iconic, right? The idea of losing these things resonates with people because they're images which we have all been brought up with emotionally. And now I mentioned at the start that we were part of a working group together. This is a plug because we just published our report. If you just Google ICOMOS Climate Change Working Group, you'll find it, right? So I don't expect you to frantically write this down. But this is really a report we did to start the process of thinking about where cultural heritage and climate change actually intersect, okay? So it covers everything from, what are the impacts of climate change? It was a table that ran to over 10 pages when we actually started mapping them. Everything from salinization in Bangladesh to wave action, to storms, to all these kind of things. But a part of this was built on the idea of we want to normalize the heritage conversation within the climate change conversation. Because for most climate scientists, they don't think of heritage as being something that is actually relevant to this. In fact, the only part of the Paris Agreement which actually really even talks about heritage, and this is only in a pretty indirect way, is this idea about taking considerable action that should follow a country-driven response which is guided by the best available science and as appropriate traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples, local knowledge systems. You could have me ranting for hours about the division they made there between traditional science and other sciences, right? But this is the way it was worded. So really a big part of this working group was trying to normalize this conversation about heritage and climate change. And at our ICOMOS General Assembly in Delhi, I wasn't there, were you there? Okay. We put forward this resolution which said that cultural heritage is both impacted by climate change and a source of resilience for communities. Right? That climate heritage sites, as well as communities with tangible heritage knowledge and practices, and constitute an invaluable repository of information and strategies to address climate change, and also the value of cultural heritage-based solutions to climate change mitigation and adaptation. So there's two aspects here, right? One of which climate change is a threat, right? The other of which is as cultural heritage, or cultural heritage is a threat. The other is that cultural heritage is an asset to help us actually address this issue. And so what I want to talk about now, I'm not actually going to show any results from this because the project is ongoing, but I wanted to show it to you guys today just because I know this is relevant to what a lot of people here do, and is a project which we are doing with NSERC through the working group. And the idea of this was actually to use the iconic power of World Heritage as a way to communicate the value of heritage in the climate change discussion. And the idea was that it wasn't just about recording all of that as a part of it, it was about telling stories, okay? It was about exploring why these stories are important to this day. And so it was also about taking a global view. So what we did was we've chosen 5 sites around the world. There are 5 sites chosen for their geographical distribution, but also because they represent a range of different climate change impacts on world heritage. What ICOMOS are really bringing to this is the kind of science behind the project, and where SALC are working on the digital recording. So the sites which were chosen, 4 of which have been completed, at Edinburgh Castle, Bagharhat in Bangladesh, Kilwa-Kisiwani in the Republic of Tanzania, Rapa Nui in the Pacific, and then Chan-Chan, which is happening next month. And they all represent slightly different challenges, slightly different impacts, and slightly different locations. So what was involved in these projects? Well, the first thing is data capture, right? Digital data capture. Laser scanning, terrestrial laser scanning and photogrammetry, brought together to create high-resolution models which could be used for baseline monitoring of impacts, right? And other management functions as well. This data is also, as we know, very attractive, so it's a useful way to raise publicity about these things too. We also did on-site interviews. This was with key stakeholders, everything from tour guides to people who lived in the local communities, to regional experts, to people from ICOMOS. And then a key part was also, right, myself and mine effectively combat climate change is to decrease our carbon emissions, right? Anything else we do in the long run just won't matter, right? We've got to get them in, right? And so these are examples of just, this is the city wall, which is just falling out off the side of the shore here. And the site manager there said they'd seen this retreat about 10 meters in 5 years, okay, which is substantially faster than they've done that before. And this is where things like digital recording comes in. Again, I'm sorry for the brighting here. And you guys, digital recording will be very familiar with these kind of lines of images. This is a Faro scanner. And the one particularly challenging building here was the mosque, because I think it involved over like 50 setups in order to be able to capture all this. But again, that data is kind of part of this project. And like I said, I don't really have any results to show you here because it's ongoing and hopefully be released next year. So the final example I want to show you, I did promise you were going to jump around the world a little bit, right? But it's a good way to all stay focused at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, right? Is a project I was involved in last year. It's part of a much bigger project exploring climate change on riverine communities in Southeast Asia. Okay, so we're working with colleagues in India, Bangladesh, and Nepal. And if we go back to that idea of cultural heritage both being a risk and being an asset in our response to climate change, this is a really, really nice example. This isn't actually a World Heritage Site, it's a tentative World Heritage Site. It has been put forward for nomination twice, both times it failed to make it, partially for the reasons we'll talk about. But what we were doing here was looking at how communities who had, these are communities who for 600 years have lived on this island, and the river floods annually. Their entire cultural heritage and traditions have adapted to exist alongside the flooding. And that's not to say it's a pleasant experience, of course it's devastating, right? But they live in a flat environment, very watery. And it's the home to a particular sect of Neo-Vrishnaite religion, which is based around these monastic centers called satras. And these satras are homes for intangible culture, and so drama and mask making and music and song and dance, right, are based around between 30 and 50 of these satras, which are spread throughout the island. And as I said before, seeing how people are living in these environments, so people tend to live on stilted houses, right? They have portable utilities, so this is the port where the boats land, which can just come out and move somewhere else if it needs to, right? And so, you know, we can learn an awful lot. There were architects involved in this study who were particularly interested in how building materials and the reuse of building materials and the portability and modularity of design allow people to actually live in this rapidly changing landscape, because whether we like it or not, there's probably a way we're all going to have to start thinking about it, like, you know, and a lot of people, especially coastal communities. And from a geospatial perspective, understanding this change was important, because it wasn't just flooding, the island is actually shrinking. So one of the great tools we have is, you know, nearly over 50 years now of freely available and downloadable satellite imagery, things like the Landsat program, which actually allow us to look at landscape change and map that landscape change and the retreating and shrinking landmasses. This is an image from Sentinel-1. Sentinel-1 is a European Space Agency radar satellite. The great thing about radar, so this is the island, right? The great thing about radar is it's not affected by cloud cover. Okay, so traditional satellite imagery, and you can see some flooding happening here. Traditional satellite imagery obviously can't see through cloud cover, but SAR can, and the great thing about synthetic aperture radar SAR is that it's collected, this particular satellite is collected every 14 days. So especially in areas like this, where we're trying to understand and, you know, manage and help promote cultural heritage, we're able to get a really, really specific indication of how the flooding actually happens in a place like this. Right, and all this data is completely free. Okay, that's the great thing about it. Right, these aren't commercial satellites. All the ESA data is free to download, and actually the software used to process the images, and you just put them together, and we can see parts of the island that flood with other parts of the island. What I've done here is I put the locations of those satras, those monasteries, over this flood image, and you can see how some of them are situated in the kind of drier parts of the island, and yet some of them are actually still situated within parts of the island that are likely to flood. Interestingly, over the last 300 years, these satras have become highly portable. So a lot of them have moved. They've just picked up everything and they've moved with them to deal with the flooding. Of course, one of the interesting things now is that over the last 50 years, the government has built a lot of these levees to stop this flooding. And this is changing the way the river floods, but it's also changing people's ability to actually adapt to it. So if you want, the study has two aspects, both the traditional ways of adapting, but also thinking about how people are adapting to adaptations. So I'm almost exactly at 50 minutes, which is quite an achievement. I thought I was going to go massively over. I suppose my key points, and I just want to come back to what I said at the start. There was a long time when I started doing GIS where people would talk about, oh, I'm applying for a grant, what are you going to do? I'm going to GIS my project as if it was a verb, okay? And this is what's going to be new, this is going to be original, and I'm going to get money because of that. And we're past that, right? These geospatial tools, these kind of tools, they need to be just part and parcel of how we manage heritage, not just world heritage, but how we manage heritage. Especially as we're reacting more and more to the kind of challenges and risks which are facing our heritage site. So I'd like to thank the Association of Canadian Studies of Ireland who brought me here, not actually to talk about this. I'm doing another project on looking at Ulster heritage in Ontario and Quebec. So if any of you know anything about that, please come and talk to me. Places associated with kind of people arriving in the 19th century. The people involved in this, some of these projects I led, some of them I worked on. That's the kind of project work that works so well in these situations. And also, Sim's here for hosting. And then finally, because I was told I have to do this, the second oldest queens in the world have just signed an agreement with Carleton University here. At the moment, it's primarily between geography and environmental studies, but I don't think it's restricted to that. And if anybody is interested, you can Google me, send me an email. There's a contact list here, and if people want to come and stay. Of course, it's actually raining most of the time in this picture, but occasionally it looks like that in your Photoshop. So thank you very much, and I suppose any questions? Yeah.
I think we will. I think that we have time for a couple of questions. So, anyone?
Two points. One is that mapping has really important values of building vehicles in the sense that what happened on that is the fire and the mapping that is done by a video game company for Assassin's Creed, in fact, being used as a basis to develop. So again, the other point I want to raise with you to respond to as well is the fact that Machu Picchu is also a site where Peruvian authorities always want to build a building. So that's where you go with the cable car. And then they talk about this giant airport that's being built nearby. So we have all the management approaches, policies, in place. I think it's a really good thing. The fact that it's like a bubble full of liquid or sand or whatever, at some point it's going to overflow no matter how much that we can end up with. Just not meet that kind of demand. So at what point do you think there's saturation of no level of management policy?
Well, I think there are sites a lot less big in Machu Picchu which are there, right? Venice, if you think about the experiences people are having in Venice at the moment, I wonder whether or not people will just stop going at some point, because it's just junk and so unpleasant, but you're right, and I think it's also important to say that, you have some sites in the world like Petra which actually make up a fairly substantial percentage of the GDP in Jordan, right? And there's a sustainability aspect to this that we need to think about. It's fine to say, oh, you need to stop people coming to your site, but what about all the jobs and the people who rely on it? And so, there are huge amounts of other pressures, which I think is also why we need to think about these sites and these management in terms of sustainable development.
Those pressures are just advantage as well.
Yeah.
In the sense that, it is the sort of who's just like you want to kind of preserve it as you can. You're expecting that happens if you try at some point you do end up into the soil and ship people elsewhere.
Well, the Machu Picchu is a good example. There's another site. I can't remember what it's called. I always struggle with it, but it's actually, you see signs up around Cusco as the second Machu Picchu, right? And it's actually a harder place. Did anybody go to it? They went to Peru. I can't remember what it's called. Remember?
I don't remember. I know what
you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. The point of it was that there was this marketing ability to say, here's this other city hidden in the mountains, and people don't go there. So why don't you go there? Or one of the paths which we looked at opening here, the rangers and the site said, oh, you can't go down there, that's where all the snakes are, it's really dangerous. So that evening we were having a pisco sours, and I went over to a pile of backpackers and I said, how do you feel about walking along a track to Machu Picchu that was full of snakes? And they were like, signs up. So I think you're right, I think it's eventually you just can't fit anymore. And it's that honeypot phenomenon.
But I don't know if this is probably a classification, but if you compare, say, Kilimanjaro with Everest, in Kilimanjaro, Tanzania, they restrict the number of people. And it's a pristine site.
Yeah.
And you look at Everest, and it's a joke.
I know, but I also think that's where we come back to sustainability. Yeah. Because you have some Serengeti and Gargara, you have these other sites in Tanzania which are can take right numbers of people, especially the secondary. Whereas, especially since the earthquake, choice doesn't what happen. That's a really difficult question. But yeah, those pictures of Hughes top of Everest, similar to Hughes, you see waving again. That's a picture. It's stunning.
Anyone else? Well, I have a question for you, Will. Given that we have a lot of, students, what would you recommend if people want to get involved in some of these type of projects?
Join ICMOS Canada.
Thank you.
No, actually, that wasn't rehearsed, right? So my background is I did classical archaeology, I did a master's in GIS, and then I did a PhD on Bronze Age ritual in Crete, right? And then I took some time out and I worked commercially, and when I came back into it, I'd done some work on the World Heritage side of the point, and I got more involved with kind of World Heritage and realised that actually there's almost an unlimited amount of work to be done. And ICMOS, especially at the moment, is trying to promote young professionals. And there's a young professional steering committee which have grants through the Heritage Convention. And that is really the best way to get involved. Because also once you're part of ICMOS, you can become part of the subcommittees. And we actually have 2 presidential subcommittees right here, right? So Fergus is head of tourism and digital enterprises, digital recording, right? So, lots of opportunities to get involved in things.
I mean, both Fergus and me, we both have gray hair. And we have been for a while. Okay, and we have been for a while in ICMOS, but actually I started in ICMOS when I was 26 years old, and it's been a really interesting experience. So thank you so much, Will, for enlightening us with all your wisdom and projects and variety of topics about how to assess archaeological sites and world heritage using remote sensing. I think it's important that you have kind of net that why with the house, and since we work a lot on technology, and there's always this question about why are we using technology only for the sake of recording these places, or also making those tools to make analytical research and understand a little bit better our heritage places, and I think that you have enlightened us with that particular point. I also want to thank Lori, because Lori has been helping in setting up the lecture of Will and everyone else in scenes that has been helpful to us. We're making the summers a little bit more exciting. I forgot to mention that we have a follow-up lecture in August. On 7th of August, we will have Marta Dimas and Leslie Friedman from the Getty Conservation Institute, and they're going to be talking about conserving archaeological sites in the Mediterranean area. And this is part of one ongoing project of Carton, of SIMS, where we have been working for the last 2 years in the archaeological site of Paphos in Cyprus. So they're coming to visit us, and we have invited them to give a lecture. And you're all welcome to attend that lecture. That lecture will take place not here, but in Patterson Hall at the university at 6 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. And that will be followed by a reception. So it will be also an interesting activity to attend. So thank you very much. I hope you have the opportunity to talk to Will while he's here. And see you next time. Thank you. We have one comment.
I hope still 14 people.